connecting to cloud server. Are we ready to go then, Matt?
Yes, thank you, Tony.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and to the HMAA for the invitation to talk about one of Seasol's new products. I am Tony Arioli, and I'm the Director of Research at Seasol. Today, I'm going to be talking about the new product called Seasol Gold. So, move to the next slide. Here we go. So the outline for today's presentation is this, as you see on the screen. I'm just going to introduce Seasol Gold to give you a little bit of a context and some confidence in the product. And the way I'm going to do that is by telling you what Seasol Gold is, what are the benefits of using it, and some results that we have. So that's the outline of the presentation for today. I guess the first thing is, what is Seasol Gold? Well, I've got to tell you it's different to Seasol. Seasol Gold does all the great things that Seasol does, but it does them better. And that's actually pretty hard to do, because we've been trying to make Seasol better for many, many years. But we've come up with a formulation that exceeds our expectations. And that formulation is what we're launching into the home garden. So it's a home garden product. And I'm just displaying what's in the actual Seasol Gold concentrate. So you have 100% of all the Seasol benefits. So that means you've got Seasol in there. You've got a chelated form of calcium, and we're interested in the calcium, and I'll explain why a little bit later on, mainly for fruit and quality issues. Now, there's a bit of boron and a little bit of nitrogen, and there's your potassium and other trace elements that come from Seasol. So it is quite a different type of product for us. It's not a organically certified product, unlike Seasol. This is not. So we wanted to combine the benefits, and we were looking at the ingredients, and what we want to combine is the benefits of Seasol bringing better root growth, improving stress tolerance, so stress protection for the plants, and the high productivity levels. But from the nutrient components, where we have the calcium and boron, which are particularly important for flowers and fruits, and mainly cell walls actually, there's a bit of nitrogen in there for green growth and photosynthesis, a bit of potassium for the flowers and stems. But I guess the important point about the calcium that we've added is it's in a chelated form. And what we really had hoped to do is try to combine these benefits so that when the plant was growing and growing well, it had access to nutrients. So I'm just going to briefly cover some of the benefits and give you some examples. You're quite familiar with root growth and the better and stress tolerance with Seasol. So that ingredient I'm going to go over quite briefly. But I am going to introduce some of our new work around the new Seasol research and our field research as well. So just to complement the understanding about what Seasol brings to Seasol Gold. So Seasol is great for root growth, and a few years ago, we started to develop this root assay system. And you see an example of a marigold plant that's being grown in Seasol. And it's got a very, very clear, large, good root system. I've got another example on the right where we've got grapevine canes that are being put into Seasol, and the comparison with no Seasol, the control. And you see a tremendous amount of root growth there. So there are quite a lot of examples that we have now shared. So I don't really want to go too much more into detail, apart from saying that root growth is one of the strengths of using Seasol. The other part of Seasol that's pretty important in the Seasol Gold product is the stress tolerance properties. We sort of started to pull this apart by using time-lapse photography in a drought stress experiment using tomatoes. And by doing that, we were able to go back into the video and separate the onset of symptoms and the recovery of symptoms. So we see on the left side, we see the left panel, we see a water-treated plant, it's going through drought, and we see a Seasol-treated plant that's going through drought. The water's been withdrawn, or the liquid's been withdrawn, and you start to see quite severe symptoms in the water-treated plant, the control, and you don't see as severe symptoms in the Seasol-treated plant. So the onset of symptoms is slower with Seasol, And these are grown in fertilised a potting media. So they're actually grown in a potting media that's got fertiliser in there, and the bottom reservoir is basically where they take up the liquid, being either water or the Seasol. But the other component, the panel on the right, is where we separated the experiment, and we added the nutrients or the Seasol and the water back to that system. And you start to see the image at 24 hours. And the Seasol plant on the right is very dynamic, very quick to recover, whereas the plant that's just fed water is not recovering as well. So we really want those two benefits in the Seasol Gold product. So we kept that product, the Seasol Gold, as 100% with all the benefits. And we capture both root growth and stress tolerance. How does it do it? Well, we've started to do molecular work to really understand how Seasol works and how it works actually. So in those tomato plants, we looked at the molecular level and we measured a molecule called proline. It's naturally in plants. It's a great indicator of stress. So if you accumulate it, you know that you're getting stress. And that's the same as maybe think of a blood pressure test. If your blood pressure is high, then that's alerting you to a problem and stress. In this experiment where we measured proline content in the leaves, you see that the accumulation is much higher in the water-treated plants and lower in the Seasol treated plants. So that's telling us that the symptoms aren't as severe in the Seasol because of the accumulation levels, and that was quite statistical. Now, we've taken that molecular work to another perspective, and we've looked at gene expression, differential gene expression, and how those networks work. So we've applied Seasol to a model system in a lab, and we've looked at the responses in terms of gene expression, and we've looked at different time points from 0, 3, 6, 12, and 24 after a stress. And so this middle diagram is showing you all the different genes or numbers of genes. They're going up at the different stages. And when you look at those genes and you start to interrogate them, you can start to work out how they interact and the pathways they work, the pathways they interact with. And it gives you a picture of what Seasol's doing. Seasol's actually working naturally. It works by utilising the plant growth responses and the plant stress responses, the defence responses, to achieve its benefits. And we can tell that by looking at the different pathways and the different genes, which is a little bit more. We have to do much more to understand how Seasol works, but it's a unique feature of Seasol that we wanted to capture in Seasol Gold. We've also done field trial research. We've done work in potatoes, we've done work in sugarcane, wine grapes, and also overseas in the US, in almonds. Now with the potato trials, we get 11% improvement. So across several years, we get 20% yield improvement in sugarcane. In wine grapes, over quite a successive number of years, we see a 13% improvement in yield. And in the US, in our almond trials, we see a 9% improvement in almond production in trees. So Seasol's pretty good at helping productivity. And we wondered whether Seasol was actually, could be a root attractant. So in the greenhouse, we set up this trial where we had this split root assay system. We use these mini potato tubers, and we asked the question, well, did the roots prefer to grow into water, or did they prefer to go into the Seasol, the brown egg chamber? And hopefully you can see all the roots, a predominant number of roots growing into the Seasol. So it certainly does seem like that Seasol has root attracting properties, and clearly one of the benefits of Seasol is it helps plants to produce more. So that's a little bit of an insight into the value of using Seasol as an ingredient into Seasol Gold. But we're also really interested in calcium. Calcium is one of those things that most people know that calcium is really good for structure. It's great for cell walls, it's stored in the cells, but it's also very important in signalling. It's a rapid responder to stress, and it acts as a second messenger. So it's really important in converting environmental cues when the plant is stressed. And so these are aspects that enable the plants to produce fruit, and that is high quality with a crunch in the taste of the fruit, and really is something that is quite well understood or used in the commercial world. So we thought it might be possible to mix calcium and a few other nutrients that I've mentioned with Seasol. But in theory, we thought it would be a good idea to combine the benefits of Seasol and calcium. But actually, in practice, we needed to invent a whole new formulation. Premium seaweed extracts have alginate or a type of sugar in them that binds with calcium, and it causes a gel. So that was a problem in compatibility. So we did invent a new formulation, and that's the basis of the Seasol Gold formulation that I'm explaining today. It's actually patented, so it was quite a lot of work to achieve that combination. So one of the things about the Seasol Gold that we were hoping and were expecting was that there would be a synergy between the Seasol and the calcium. And I've tried to sort of illustrate this in an image on the left. We have a plant that's growing, there's calcium that's in the soil, available calcium that's in the soil. And as the plants are growing roots and a good root system, their capacity to capture nutrients becomes better. So it means that they need nutrients. And as they take up more of the nutrients, then they can distribute them across the plant and then grow more effectively, but also produce fruit that's tastier and it's got a good crunch. So the combination of a good growing system and the availability of the nutrients is something that we thought could be something that would combine the benefits of these two ingredients and get some extra advantages and benefits. So we did the testing in the greenhouse, and I'm going to give you some examples of testing in the greenhouse and also in the field. And the focus is going to be on plants and root growth. We're going to got some examples of yield, fruit yield and quality, and soil properties, soil microbiology. So this is a time-lapse photography. It's a root assay, again, that we developed in our R&D team a few years ago to understand how plants grow with different types of seaweed extracts. And we see the traditional Seasol pictured on the left, and this is where we've used a young tomato seedling, which has got an established root system, and then we've put it into the Seasol on the left, or we've put it into the Seasol Gold formulation on the right, and we've tracked the growth of the roots and for 5 days. So they're in the treatment for 5 days. And if you look at the panel on the right, you'll see the white fibrous roots. They're extending quite through the jar there. That's actually the Seasol Gold difference between that and the Seasol. You get dramatic root growth, and it's amazing in 5 days to get that level of root growth. So certainly the Seasol Gold products has been able to leverage all the advantages of Seasol and the nutrients to get a much, much better root system. And if we test that in the greenhouse in potted tomato plant experiments, which is what we've done, and in those, we've taken those plants out, we removed the potting mix and washed the roots, and then you can start to see the differences, the visual differences in root growth. So the two panels with the Seasol Gold, the second panel and the fourth panel are tomato plants grown with Seasol Gold, and the first and the third panel are basically grown in a potting mix, the same potting mix containing the fertilizer, but without any Seasol products, just fertilized with water. That's the control. And you can see quite dramatic differences in root mass, actually. And if you go and measure that from all the different replicates, and the gold bars indicate the Seasol Gold plants, and the blue bars indicate the control. And in each case, you can see that the replicates, the Seasol Gold is producing more of a root mass, a dry root weight per plant mass. And if you apply statistics, you can see that there's quite a considerable increase and meaningful increase in root mass. So that was a good to see. We also then looked at the potting mix itself and asked questions about the soil biology. So we asked, we wondered about the total bacterial count and the total fungi that were in the potting mix. So the blue indicates pots that had tomatoes growing in them, and they were fed with water, and the gold columns indicate that it's the Seasol Gold product that was applied to the potting mix while the plants were growing. And this was done at flowering. And what we see with the total bacterial count, there's a dramatic increase in the number of bacteria that are growing in the soil. So the fertility of the soil has been affected, and that's statistically important, statistically meaningful. On the right, we see the total fungi count. It's you see that the Seasol Gold product in the gold bar has increased. It's not statistical, but it's definitely increased. So we start to see signs that soil microbiology is changing and improving. That diversity, then we looked next at leaf nutrient content at flowering. So we measured the nitrogen, and phosphorus, potassium, and calcium, and again the blue bars are indicating the controls, and the gold bars are indicating the plants that have been treated with the Seasol Gold. And you see some moderate increases in the nitrogen content in the leaves with Seasol Gold and with the phosphorus, and but you don't see any statistical differences at this stage between the potassium or the calcium. So we are in fact having an impact on leaf nitrogen or leaf nutrient content, and that's important because as you'll see in the next slide, it relates to photosynthesis. So we wanted to measure, we wanted to get an idea of how the leaf health was affected by Seasol Gold, and there is a way where you can use an instrument called a SPAD instrument, which basically measures chlorophyll content, and it's related to, you can correlate that to nitrogen content in the leaves. And that's what we did. We used this assessment across all our different replicates, and in each case we saw that there was a higher leaf chlorophyll content in these plants, indicating more nitrogen, which was consistent with the previous result that I've just shown you. But in any case, when we measured it statistically, there were quite clear differences. So the expectation is that photosynthesis is benefiting from the extra chlorophyll and nitrogen content. We also did greenhouse experiments looking at fruit yield per plant. And this graph shows us again 5 different replicates being tested. The gold bars are your Seasol Gold. And in each case, you see the gold bar there is higher than the water control, and statistically, we can measure that and show that there is more fruit weight per plant, and the cumulative across the experiment, there's far more production due to the Seasol Gold treated plants. So we're getting all the right benefits that we would hope by combining nutrients, the calcium, and the Seasol at 100%. The last one that we did in the greenhouse was to look at fruit quality. So we took the plants, we collected the fruit, and we sent it off to a lab that specialised in measuring fruit quality. They measured yellow shoulder disorder. Yellow shoulder disorder is one of these things that's not well understood in tomatoes, but we know that calcium and magnesium are very important, and they contribute to this disorder. So if you look at the top left side with the rounded circle, I just wanted to show what the yellow shoulder disorder looks like. The tomato doesn't really colour all the way through, and it has these yellow borders or shoulders. And if you look at the left panel, there's quite a predominance of that in the water control. Whereas the right panel, where you've got the Seasol Gold treated plants and they've been harvested for their fruit, it's far different. You don't see any signs of the yellow shoulder disorder. So we are starting to see the benefits of the Seasol Gold product at the quality level, the fruit quality level. And these type of results are actually measured and mirrored in the field. So I've got a few examples from the field just to complement the work that we've done in the greenhouse. So this is in pawpaw seedlings. These are pawpaw seedlings that have been treated with Seasol Gold formulation, and you see the uniformity on the left, and you see the root growth on the right. And that actually translates to when the Seasol Gold's used on the trees, you see that the trees have better uniformity and growth and good growth as well. An example from bananas where Seasol Gold is used for soaking the bananas to propagate them. That's the image on the left. And you also see it being used in lychees, for example, where you get higher quality fruit. And for establishment, here's some photos showing an establishing new vineyard in New Zealand, where you see cane uniformity, establishment and growth being the very, very excellent, actually good quality, the type of observations that you would want to see for a Seasol Gold product. And that's mirrored in a totally different type of plant where avocado root balls were soaked before planting, and then the trees were established. And they're also showing this common phenotype, common trait of being highly uniform. So one more slide just to show a greenhouse situation using Seasol Gold, the capsicums, a lot of uniformity, and good plant growth. And uniformity is pretty important because it enables the harvest to be uniform for fruit quality as well. So we have been able to capture the benefits that we had hoped for in producing Seasol Gold and the new formulation. And it really does indeed, Seasol Gold does all the great things that Seasol does, but better. And to do that, if we look at the image on the left where Seasol Gold is combining all the benefits, we have a depiction of a plant growing, and it's set in the ecosystem of the whole plant where you've got above and below soil activities happening. So if you look at the bubble on the right, when you start to add Seasol, the plant starts to grow better. It sets better root systems, and the root systems then can capture all the nitrogen and boron and the different essential elements that are in the Seasol Gold, and particularly the calcium because it's in a chelated and available form. And then those nutrients are taken back up into the plant. They help the plant to produce flowers, to produce high quality fruit, and to produce leaves that are photosynthesizing and capturing more of the sunlight. And that photosynthesis then gets converted into sugars and shared in the aerial parts of the plant. But a high proportion of that photosynthesis, the photosynthate, then gets exuded in the plant roots and released as exudate, which is very, very important for the microbes and soil biology. So you start to see this cycle happening and the capturing of all the benefits being linked together. And that's why we see and believe that Seasol Gold does all the great things that Seasol does, but better. So thank you for listening and the opportunity to speak, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much there, Tony. Now, hopefully people can hear me through here. I'm, as I mentioned before, operating from a mobile device, so we'll see if we have any questions coming through. And if anyone wants to turn their camera on and their microphone on, we can take some questions as well across there. I think there might have been something in the chat, which I'm going to try and access currently. But I think there was, I think someone mentioned at some point talking about incorporating power feed as well, and power feed as part of the combination there. Tony, what, in terms of nutrient delivery and that type of thing,
Yeah,
Seasol Gold and Power Feed, how, that maybe perhaps start on that. And if anyone's got any other questions, feel
yeah,
free to flag them.
absolutely. The concept of using power feed or a fertilizer, they're always been seen as the meat and veggies. So Seasol's the veggies. It brings the stress tolerance, and the power feed brings the nutrients. Now the nutrient levels in the Seasol Gold are really just maintenance levels, very low levels that need to be supplemented with a proper growing fertilizer program. It could be power feed or an equivalent, but when the plant is producing more, then it's going to need more nutrients. So Seasol Gold was never designed to provide all the nutrients. It was designed to complement all those benefits and start that cycle. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yep. Now I'm just going to see again from the chat, and again, if anyone's got any other further questions through there, feel free to post them. I've got a question from Gordon about planting gel and it not being available now. Is that yeah? I don't know if you'd speak on that side of the product range, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to take the question, but I don't know the answer, so
yeah.
I'll have to get back to Gordon on
That's
that.
okay.
If you could forward the question, that would be good.
That's fine. Sorry, here we go. Tony mentioned. Okay, so Tony mentioned it isn't certified organic. Is that going to happen? Is that something that's in the pipeline? Is it going through the paperwork side of things, or is it something that's...
No, the Seasol Gold won't be certified organic. The component that gives it the calcium and the nitrogen is calcium nitrate, so it can't be an organic version of Seasol. So they can be used in different for different purposes, but no, the Seasol Gold won't be certified organic.
Organic, okay. And then also, is it more expensive than the regular Seasol, which I'm...
Well, it will be, because I think it is a premium Seasol, and the cost of making the premix to make the formulation is higher. So it'll be a premium product with I don't actually know what the cost is, but I suspect it'll be more, but I don't know the actual number yet. So
that's all fine. Now, I'm sorry, Jennifer, if I can't see these two, I think you might be able to jump into it because I'm just tracking it through on the phone. Seasol versus Seasol Gold, which is pretty well covered off. And again, anyone, if you want to jump in with your cameras.
Hey, Matt.
Oh, here we go. Here's someone, Steve.
I was curious, and Tony's comment as well, I think, is the same. It's at the beginning, the setup was Seasol Gold is much better than regular Seasol, and here's some examples. And I think there was one or maybe two slides of trial work at the very beginning that showed a direct comparison, and then all the rest of them were just Seasol Gold versus water. It just felt a little light on to me to understand how Seasol Gold is superior when most of the work was just referencing against water as the control.
Yep.
So yeah, so I guess the purpose of showing that time-lapse photography and comparing the Seasol directly with the Seasol the Seasol Gold was to show that there are clear differences in the root structure, and that was an indication of what you could expect from gold. Now, if you look at Seasol, and I've said that Seasol is a very hard product to improve, but you look at the consistency across all the assessments that we've done. So when you look at the consistency across the SPAD readings, the fruit quality, you just see this uniformity aspect coming through that is superior to the Seasol. Seasol will work, but the Seasol Gold seems to give you that consistency much better.
We just didn't see any examples of that, that's all. So all of those traits that we saw with the Seasol Gold about improving various parameters of a crop, they're all the things you'd expect to see from any seaweed-based product. I was just looking forward to seeing a direct comparison with regular Seasol, so you could gauge how much of an improvement you could expect to achieve.
Yeah, so in terms of it being used in agriculture, for example, we do get better response. We get feedback from the market saying that, yeah, it is actually better, and we are moving to using Seasol Calcium or Seasol Gold, which is the same formula. So my intention in those last photos was to show you that there are real users that have compared in the field both and chosen one over the other. Now, those observations and experiences aren't the same as being done in the greenhouse, but they are nevertheless good examples of what people are experiencing and expecting. And one of the themes that continues to come back to us is the uniformity of using Seasol Gold. And that's the key difference really between Seasol and Seasol Gold. Not all seaweeds are the same, and we're starting to learn quite a lot about them by doing our molecular work. And we've published this year some work which shows that depending on the type of seaweed that you use, you can have differences in those gene expression patterns, and the patterns that are very important for triggering plant responses to plant defense and plant stress. So trying to keep that and maintain that within Seasol is one of the benefits that we were hoping to show. And that's why a lot of the tests were diverse across nutrient testing, biology in the soil, the SPAD meters for photosynthesis. They're things we see with Seasol, but we don't see them consistently enough.
I appreciate all of that. It's just, if we look at the Bunnings website, a 1.2 litre regular Seasol versus the Seasol Gold is about 30% increase in price. So I think for such a significant price increase, it would be reasonable to see a significant improvement in the crop. That's all. That's what I was looking to see. So.
Yeah, and that's a good point. There is a difference in price. You just made me aware of the difference being 30%. So
that's just one pack size. There might be better economies of scale in different sizes. I didn't compare. I just looked at the one.
So I think for someone who is in agriculture and their life relies on agriculture, a 30% increase is something they would consider very carefully before moving to the Seasol Gold formulation. So, and they wouldn't do it unless there was a good reason they could see the advantages in doing that, and that's what we see. So, yeah, we can certainly do more testing. There's no questions with that, and the results that I'm showing you are only a subset of the results that we have. But I think the message is that for Seasol Gold, we've actually been able to achieve something that we thought we couldn't do, and that is make Seasol better.
I was also curious about something in one of the earlier slides where you mentioned that the calcium was in a chelated form, and there was a sentence there that said extended availability.
Yeah.
And I was just curious, to me, a chelated form usually means that it's readily available and therefore more rapidly used up rather than an extended period. And so is there something different about the structure of what you've used, or have I just misunderstood something on the slide?
No. So, often with calcium, there is actually a lot of calcium in the soil, and pH makes a big difference. So the roots can actually grow to a calcium source, but it becomes hard to dislodge that calcium from the soil particles. And so the plants then have to grow to that source. So if you're applying a chelated version of the calcium, that version is more available to the plants. The plants have a way of capturing that calcium and bringing it into their system. My point was more that the availability of calcium in the soil is not always high and available, even though it's present. And that's why having a chelated form, which is a bit protected from the microbes, still allows you to be present in the soil and not wash through, and still then allows you for the roots to then access it. it extends its time or its availability in that root zone. Whereas the calcium that's in the soil is going to be there for a long time, but it doesn't get dislodged very easily, and it's very, very pH dependent.
Okay, thank you for that, Tony. Now, another question that came through, which I'll just jump back to, and there's more or less someone talking about in terms of someone who's using the Seasol and power feed combination, switching over to the, more or less the benefit of switching across and the nutrient value to switching across to perhaps the Seasol Gold and the power feed. Is it perhaps even just the regularity of the application of the Seasol that might be, a bit more regular than your regular fertilizing regime that you might have otherwise? Like, is it the fact that you can be applying it more regularly?
Sorry, you dropped out a little bit. What was the question?
Well, it's mainly, so it was, one of the questions from Tony Salter on the chat was about the actual someone who's using Seasol and power feed with the nutrient value of the power feed there, if it's worthwhile, them going across the extra to go across Seasol Gold and perhaps power feed. And what I was wondering is it the regularity of the application that you could be applying the Seasol more regularly than perhaps your pelletized fertilizers and things like that? Is it the, perhaps fortnightly application of the calcium as well as the seaweed?
Yeah. So one of the important things about the way seaweeds work or Seasol works is that regularity does contribute to the benefits, and that's what Seasol Gold is trying to leverage by being able to provide a small amount of nutrients at the right time in the right place so the plant can take it up very efficiently. Now, a growing plant that's more successful in setting more fruit or more flowers, more fruit, and producing high fruit quality is obviously going to have a fertilizer regime that meets that, because the nutrients are what drives that they use that to create the building blocks and to grow. So you will need a good program, and that needs to be something that doesn't have to change. It could be the power feed, but the fact that if you're getting better growth, you'll have to adapt your fertilizer program to meet the requirements of that plant. So the expectation is that power feed will certainly do that, and you can increase the frequency. But at this stage, I think most people will look at the plant and see if it's deficient or it's not growing, and then provide the nutrients as they see fit for the time.
I'll mute myself. And the other one was just a revision of the additive that made it non-organic. It was calcium nitrate, wasn't it? With the
that's right. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm just going to double check, and hopefully, if anyone had any other questions, I think hopefully I've covered them all off. And if anyone's got a more expansive view other than my iPhone, I'm just going to check through that we've covered off all bases. Tony's okay if we share through the presentation as well, just for later on down the track for those that couldn't attend this evening, and we'll be able to make sure that that's available for other people through there. But if I don't have any other final questions, first off, thank you for joining us across today and give us an update about this new range of products. And I'm just double checking one last time to make sure that there's no other questions, last fleeting questions through there. But it's been great to be able to connect up together, and sorry everyone for the delay in joining across us from my end. So but thank you very much, Tony Arioli, for taking us through Seasol Gold.
Thank you very much. It's thank you again for the opportunity. It was good. I guess Zoom is the way of the future, so there may be more of these in due course. Thanks again.
Bye. Getting together. Thank you, Tony.